Hello everyone, this is Stas and welcome to my new TouchDesigner tutorial, and this one would be rather quick because I wanted to share you the trick with creating nice looking shadows. I discovered it yesterday when I worked on my other tutorial, which will be ready soon, maybe next week or so. Soft shadows. If I turn off distance blur, by default TouchDesigner give me that. And as you could see, we have a lot of artifacts of shadows here, and even if I turn off rotation, here at some, I'm not sure is it visible on YouTube with all compression algorithms or not, but probably here you could see the artifacts on the spheres itself, looks like a weird circles from shadows, and I wanted to get rid of it, and my idea was to somehow to blur it, but blur only shadows and not geometry itself. And I discovered a technique how to do it, and here is my final result. And let's do everything from scratch, or almost from scratch. I would like to use a container. Let's make it square. And let me grab this noise position because it's nice looking noise. And let me also grab a spheres as well. Just to save you a little bit of time, so I don't need to create everything and spend 2 minutes on creating all of this. It's just a noise and a noise on top of this noise to make this is a bigger noise, this is a smaller noise. All right, let's make a geometry, a pretty standard rendering setup. Geometry, funk material, I use a camera, and I like to connect usually light to my camera, so the position of light would be relative to the position of the camera. For me, it's just easier to adjust light in camera this way, but this trick will work with different setup when your lights are independent of camera as well. Okay, and we need a render, and let's make it square. I like square renders, and output here, and here's our setup. Let's turn on the instancing, and I will use this position RGB. Okay, here's our nice looking, or maybe not nice looking, but okay looking noise. Let me find something different. Okay, and we also would like to see the plane on the floor because I have a different kind of shadow artifacts on the floor and on the spheres itself. So let's make a simple grid or circle. Circle should work fine. The orientation is at X, a little bit lower, -1, and another geometry. And of course it should be much bigger. Interesting. Okay, I'll fix it if I will need it. Okay, and for the usually I don't like these specs, and I lower down the shyness, and the specular I'll also lower down. But also I would like to move a light a little bit here, maybe a little bit upward. Okay, and maybe also a little bit here, and let me also move a geometry itself a little bit to leave a space for the shadow. Okay, and I don't need to see this and this. And if I turn on my shadows, Let's first start with the head shadows. Nothing going on because the light very far away. As you could see here, it doesn't see the geometry. I moved it too much. Okay, now we have see back our lights, and let's find some good position because I want shadow a little bit diagonally. And let me also close up a little bit. Okay, and here I want to see the all shadows. And another way to see it, it's another trick I learned a lot many times a long ago. As far as I remember, it's from some Matthew Regan tutorial. If you use a depth with your light instead of camera and you set it to 16-bit, it doesn't matter here, and rearrange from camera space and give a nice range, here you could see it would be a shadow map. It would be used as a it's kind of would be used, the very similar image would be used as a shadow map. And by the way, you could also use the custom shadow map. If you know for example, let me very quickly show you another little trick. I haven't used it because I couldn't find a way how to do it. Let me also make a level here and let me use this custom map. And here I could use the custom shadow matte. So it's not the same image. The shadow matte is very similar. So the shadow is on the place, but we have this ugly issue. But you could try to manipulate it and maybe you'll find some. Oops. It's not what I wanted. So you could try to use depth and the cache to procedurally generate a nice shadow custom map. I didn't find a method to do it properly, so I've never used it. And let me switch to the hard and let me move it a little bit more to have. Okay, that's nice. But I don't like hard shadows. I prefer to make it soft. And here's our problems begins. Because if I switch to the soft shadow, I already see some issues here. And let me also move my camera a little bit upward to have more space. Okay. Because it's already a little bit more glitches, but I like my shadows much softer. So I increase the light size and it will increase the number of issues. And also if I increase the max shadow softness, I also get additional shadow issues. And I could solve some of them by filtering, didn't work this time, or increasing the search steps, which also not work perfectly all the time. But here, as you could see, if you understand, the light is somewhere over here, so here we shouldn't see any shadows at all. And if I increase the search steps, I get rid of this shadows that shouldn't be here. Alright. But now we want to somehow blur this, because overall the shadow looks nice and it's only problems with these edges, which is very visible. And on the spheres itself, right now it's not visible, but maybe if I rotate it, I'll find a good spot where you could see the artifacts. Here. Here probably you could see the artifacts on the spheres itself. And this is quite a good sphere with, well, it's not a good sphere. It's a polygon with 4, so it's not much details. Because it also depends on the details. If you set the frequency higher, probably you'll get less artifacts here, but it will increase the GPU power. Because the GPU will need to render a lot of quite complex spheres. So I prefer to use this the polygon with a not high frequency, or as a mesh with also not a lot of details. And here you could see the other type of artifacts, which also ugly. And if I increase, again, it disappear, but it will increase the other issues, the performance issues. All right, probably this is it. And now, how could we blur this? Well, here on the font material and on the PBR material, we have this color buffers option. And I have 2 tutorials about using color buffers for creative rendering, but now we will use it for shadows. If I click this shadow strength and I set the render select, and I want first color buffer, it says there is no color buffer because here we need to set the number of color buffers. Okay, and I also need this material applied for the second geometry. And here we have our shadows. And as you could see on this shadow map, here's our artifacts. So, well, it's not our shadow, it's inversion of our shadow. So we could invert it back very easily. And now we have our shadows. And let me use a switch here to compare the before and after result. Switch, where are you? Here our switch. Oops, not this one, this one. Here's our switch, it would be before. And now we need to combine somehow this image and these shadows. And in this image, I would like to render it without any shadows. And my first attempt was to create the second light without shadows and use a render path to render the same image without shadows. But then I find my more elegant solution, because here we also have this shadow color. If by some reason you want red shadows, you could set it here. But what's interesting is that shadow strength, this color buffer, it still looks the same. And if I set my shadow color to 111, so to pure white, here I have my render without any shadows, and here I have my shadows. So I could just multiply it. And I have nice shadow result. And now I could do something with these shadows. For example, and this was my first attempt, is to use blur. And let's make it bigger. And now this shadow looks much nicer. So let me... This was before, and this is after. Before and after. But can you see what I see here? On the edge of the spheres, we have the other issue, the white gradient, and we don't want to see it. And this is a problem with the blur. And I tried different methods of the blur, different types of the blur, different parameters. I also check the shader toy and implement different other kind of blurs, and nothing is working until I tested the smart denoise. The smart denoise, I implement this in TouchDesigner and I shared it with my Patreon like in November or maybe December. And the main usage of it, it's very strange that it works for the shadow, because main usage is to get rid of noise on these dark photos or dark movies, and it works very well for it. But it also works very well here for the shadows. And by the way, now on the description for this video I have a link to the available post for everyone on my Patreon, so you could download here this smart denoise with all of this setup. And so let me turn it here, let me make it nicer, smaller, and also connect it to the switch. So if I switch here, it doesn't look good because we need to adjust it. And the way to adjust it, on the one hand, you want to, first of all, for this threshold is good for the main application, for the noise in photos. But for this shadow issue, the threshold equals to 1 works the best of all. As you could see, it's already looks a little bit better. And now you also want to increase the number of sigma and coefficient sigma to find a good spot. The problem with it is the more sigma value is, and especially the more k sigma value is, the slower this algorithm. So you want to find a good solution with your shadows. And by the way, sometimes the shadow artifacts looks differently when you rotate your geometry. So it's a good idea to apps times seconds multiply by 4, for example, and rotate our geometry. Maybe you will spot the other artifacts. Well, right now it looks like it works fine. Oh, okay, we have some issues here. Maybe if I... yeah, much better. Okay, I don't like a little bit this. Let's try to... okay, this is better. The only problem with it is it's quite heavy. If you go inside and check the GPU and CPU time, it's 7 milliseconds, which quite a lot. But as you could see, I'm here almost at 60 FPS and I'm record this video on the same GPU device. So overall it's okay for real-time performance, but please try to use the lower sigma and lower k sigma values. And that's it for the shadow trick. I hope you find it useful in your setups, and if you... it would be very nice to find the more fast blur, the faster blur that doesn't have this issue like our blur here, that doesn't have this issue of edges. So if you test the other kind of blurs, if you find somewhere, and if you find something fast and work, please share in the comments or on Patreon or somewhere else. Also, there is a possibility, I haven't explored it yet because, as I said, I discovered this trick yesterday. But here, since we have the shadows and the render in separate tops, probably you could do something with it. Maybe you could use some kind of feedback loop, or maybe you could displace it, or maybe you could, I don't know, what could you do? Or maybe just use a level to adjust the brightness of the shadows, or something else. So please also experiment with this whole other tools that you could apply to the shadow matte. And also you could experiment with the composition. So maybe you maybe multiply is not the best option. Maybe you'll find the other options of composite top more interestingly. But I haven't tested it yet, so I don't know. And if you find something very interesting with this technique, please share with me as well. And the last what I wanted to show you is here on the shadow. The higher resolution is, the higher filter sample is, it also eats a GPU. And with our technique, we could now reduce probably filter samples quite a lot, maybe search steps, not that much, maybe something like this. Maybe we could decrease the resolution. Let's try very low. Well, now we have these issues here. Maybe 8. Okay, it looks better. I still have some issues, so probably I'll leave it. And now you have more range of light size, and it still works okay. And you could increase the softness. And you will need to adjust the blur settings and everything, but overall, with this technique, you could have quite a nice soft shadow that runs real time on a complex scene like this one. And it works with different types of geometry, with instancing, without instancing, everything you like. So, I hope you find it useful, and see you next time. Bye bye.